Good morning, everyone. Apologies that we're a few minutes late. We are welcome to the Festival of Enterprise COVID-19 webinar series. I hope everyone is holding up well, given the strange circumstances we're under. It's Friday, thank goodness. So we've almost made it to the end of the week, which is, I'm sure, a relief to many of you. I know it is to me. I'm joined this morning by Richard Bartlett from Export Unlocked, who will be taking us through a presentation on international trade. Richard, thank you very much for joining us this morning and giving us your time.
You're welcome.
The presentation that Richard will be taking us through this morning is about international trade programs in COVID-19, and preparing and looking into the future and how we can deal with the impact on world trade, which is, yes, a topic I'm sure we're all interested to hear and not clear on at the moment. So Richard, thank you for that. And with that, I will pass it over to you. I know you're going to share a presentation with us this morning.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, David. Good morning, everybody. I hope you're well and safe. And like I say, we're nearly towards the end of the week now. So we're getting there slowly. And like I say, it's been a tough time for everybody. It gives us all time to reflect on things. And one thing I wanted to talk about today was global trade. Just give you some, I've been working in global trade for 25 years. I think, are we on the screen, Deb?
Yeah, you know what, Richard, the presentation just corrupted, so I'm going to reopen it. There we go.
Okay.
Give us half a second.
Thank you. Technology is fantastic.
It's been very helpful this morning.
Yeah, it's fun and games. At least we're all good.
There we go. Back in action.
Ah, lovely. That's brilliant. Thank you. So what I wanted to talk about today, I've been involved in international trade for a very, very long time, working with the Institute of Exports, the ICC, the Chamber of Commerce and Trade Ireland. And we're certainly seeing, after the impact of what was going to happen with Brexit, we've had a huge change with COVID-19, which has been a real shock to the global market. And I just wanted to illustrate and go through some areas for you to look at and to be really prepared of how we're going to come out of this when we do. And hopefully it'll be a lot quicker than we imagine. So let's hope it's in the next few months, and then global trade can get back up to scratch. And also what I've done as well, going through the presentation, I just want to give you some snippets of some ideas that where we might see some green signs that the economy is starting to build again. So again, it's just for you to plan. I know it's not easy because a lot of you, like myself, are working from home, and I'm not on furlough, unfortunately, but hopefully some of you are on that situation and you're all okay with your coffee and waiting for me to go through these slides. Go on to the next slide, please, David. Looking at the World Trade Organization, the WTO is the huge organization built based in Switzerland who look at global trade. And I've been doing obviously I've worked at the WTO as well, so I've had first hand of what they do. And they're certainly the people who see how the trade is going to react to this global meltdown at the moment, unfortunately, with COVID-19. And certainly we're seeing, because of the rapid changing situation, this is what the Director General, Roberto Azevedo, who's a very, very, I do like this man, to have the person in the right place at the right time is certainly this chap. He will certainly see and help global trade in the future. I'm absolutely certain of that, with concessions on duties, etc., which I'll go through. He thinks that the global market will obviously be a massive, dramatic supply chain effect. Demand shocks the world's economy. That shocks are then causing major disruptions. So we're certainly seeing disruptions within world trade, because obviously at the moment, most people, most countries are not working. And the only country that's probably up and running collectively at the moment is probably China. So these disruptions will be apparent in the WTO's trade. So they're saying they're certainly going to be looking at this and ways they can help kickstart the global economy. One thing they might be doing is looking at different duties, etc., with countries and how we can make and stimulate the economy. Next slide, please, David. I just wanted to show you on the slides, just give you some illustration. And I looked at this and just to give you some ideas of how we see the global market and how we see the changes, what have happened over the last probably 25 years of downturns in currency crisis, the dot-com crash, the crash and the global crisis. And one thing I wanted to do, because we hear a lot of doom and gloom, and obviously we understand COVID-19 certainly put a lot of negativity in the market and in global trade. But actually, if you look, and I just wanted to highlight this so it gives you some illustration. If you look at COVID-19, obviously we can see the downside of it now starting to downgrade, as you can see in the red. But actually, if you look at the financial markets in 2009 and 2008, you can see the drop to -2% of GDP growth. So we're certainly not there yet. So we're certainly seeing that global trade is certainly having a huge impact. And it'll be wise to see how, if you're a company now exporting or importing, have a look at areas where you are importing from, speaking to you, because I know most countries, I'm still speaking to a lot of countries are still trading. Lots of forwarders in the UK are still shipping. I'm moving 15, 16 pallets into Spain today. And I've got some other shipments going into Italy and other places. So things are moving. But again, it's keeping the economy now. I know a lot of people rely on the China market, and I wanted to illustrate how the China market will, I think, be the reason why we'll see some green lights in the future. Could we just do the next slide, please, David? Yep. One thing I wanted to have a look at when we talk about global trade is the impact that China has on global trade. We know China is a huge market, but I wanted to illustrate, just to give you some ideas of how countries rely on the Chinese market. Now, there's two ways of looking at this from a global trade, is that we know that a lot of countries rely on the Chinese products to come in for them then to distribute and sell either in the country or particularly in the UK, where you can distribute in the UK, or you export these goods back out into the single market, into Europe or elsewhere, into outside the European Union. And what I wanted to highlight here was the UK's impact on dealing with China. Now, we know China's obviously had the COVID. They've kind of passed. They're on they seem to be now getting back to normal. They're running around 50% at the moment, and that's getting better every day. But we see that China will be a market that we see in the next probably 4 or 5 months that hopefully will get back as normal as possible. This will have an impact on global trade to me, because obviously the UK relies heavily on imports coming in from China. And I just wanted to highlight here, if you see on the chart here, that UK is actually third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth biggest importer from China. And also the two key markets that we would look at going forward would be the United States and China, to see how they recover. Now, we know the United States, like the UK, are going through the COVID-19 like lots of other countries. We're in the midst of it at the moment, so we're not quite sure when we're going to come out. We do hope that it will be sooner rather than later. But you can see the impact that China has on the United States. So this could have a double whammy to me, that China, if countries are not opening for a long period of time, the production of China is not going to be at full capacity, because obviously it can't supply something where lots of businesses are closed or they're not running at full capacity because they can't enter the domestic market at the moment because of the COVID-19. So it has a kind of double whammy. So the United States relies 16.8% of Chinese total exports, but actually last year, the United States reduced their global trade with China by 14%. So the US are certainly seeing a downturn in buying from China, but they're certainly now, I think they'll ramp that up because China's ready to produce and get stuff ready, whereas other countries are still in the midst of waiting for parts, etc., to come in. So we'll certainly see the difference in the marketplace, and this will just highlights. I was looking at this just to see the impact of the United Kingdom and how heavily we're reliant on China. We are bringing containers in now, and I'm sure companies who are on this today are looking at the market, how it's going to affect them for bringing goods in. We know the UK have already stated that goods coming into the UK are allowed to go to warehouses and be taken into warehouses, and obviously then you can start to work on that. So we're hoping that's going to be much clearer to customers to know what they need to do, because I'm talking to a lot of businesses in the UK who are actually closed now for 2 weeks. So again, after that 2-week period, hopefully they'll come back, or we'll have to wait to see if that's more of a prolonged situation within the global market and how that affects China, because China is now getting around 50% capacity and starting to export lots of goods. But we know at the moment there's a lot of obviously medical equipment and other things are taking precedence on movement of goods coming into the world, really, not just the UK, everywhere, so we can be safe and NHS, etc., can be okay. Could you just do the next slide, please, David? How do we see the global rebound after COVID? I've been looking at this. I've been analysing it for obviously a week, and as you can imagine, obviously when we're sat at home, we get a lot of time, and I've looked at very different views, and I've listed a few here. We know the markets are fragile, and we have no idea at the moment how long COVID-19 will last. We know that for a fact, and we know what I would say to businesses now. It's a great way to really look at your strategy and plan. Can you buy your products closer to home, or are you going to rely heavily on China to bring your goods in? Are you looking at your export market? Are you talking to your customers abroad to make sure that they can actually receive your goods? Because the quicker we can rebound to this, the better it's going to be. So I think that's very important. Will the EU rebound? I've been reading just this week on the effects and some really good articles, and I don't want to be too depressive on this. I want to be quite positive. They're not too sure, particularly in areas like Italy and Spain. They know that the EU is going to be hit hard. They know that there's going to be a lot of, like the UK, a lot of stimulus input of money, etc., to kickstart the economy. But we certainly know that Europe, we think, will be affected. So again, if you are exporting into places like Italy or importing from places like Europe, have a look at your market, have a look to see, are we relied heavily on that? Could it have an effect on our business? Because this is what it's all about. It's all about strategy. It's about your strategy, looking to see what the impact is going to be. And that's why I want to show you China, because if you are importing from China, you've got a greater chance, because China now is coming out of the COVID. So their production will start ramping up. So again, if you're importing from China, you've got that chance of bringing goods in. So you should, in the next 4 to 8 weeks, should start getting back to a normality. But the impact you're going to have is if you're doing a domestic market in the UK, which is flat. Again, you need to have a look at what you need to be buying. Do you need to buy the same amount of stock that you've been buying? I know a lot of companies are actually short on stock, and that's been a big impact on the economy. Because obviously with China, and we had the prolonged extra 2 or 3 weeks where everything was stopped. So again, people relying on it's a great. Unfortunately, China does make the world go round. It is the biggest global economy. Now it's overtaken the US last year. So we know that we rely heavily on China now, with that picking up again. Will the UK rebound, or do we have a prolonged negative impact on China? That depends. It depends on the stimulus of the UK. We can get the UK back within the next 3 months and hopefully kickstart the economy. We'll start to see snippets. If you're bringing your goods in from China and they start arriving, and then you can kickstart by distributing, because ultimately we all want to be working, and we all want to be carrying on business. And I know it's been very difficult for a lot of you out there, and you have my best wishes, because I know it's not easy. It's easy for me to sit here and talk about things, but I know the impact it's having on a lot of businesses who I'm talking to. What's the economist saying? Well, they're saying that they thinking that depending on how we stimulate the economy, and I'm particularly talking about the UK and how China and US will rebound, they think that there will be a bounce back towards the third quarter, maybe 2021, which, considering the amount of stimulus that the UK is putting in, it could be a good sign that we might see some signs of a bounce back towards the second and third quarter. If we don't have this, and we don't have the stimulus coming in, there is economists saying that this could last longer and go into 2022, and at the very worst 2023. I'd like to hope that the way the UK government is handling and trying to invest in UK businesses, I know it doesn't seem like that, but they're trying to keep everything going. Hopefully we'll see a kickstart next year. One thing that's been talked about a lot in global trade, and some of that I've been harping on about for many, many years, and I still can't get my head why this is not done, is we've realised how digitalisation is such an important key role to the recovery of international trade in future. Digitalisation makes the impact of procedures a lot easier. Now, unfortunately, we're still not quite there. Lots of countries are doing the digitalisation, but certainly the UK are not doing that. And we will certainly see that as a rebound. We think as a positive, that digitalisation will play a key part in the recovery of future trade. with China and the US will show signs of optimism. So they think in the optimism months of second and third quarter to, like they've said, so they think that China and the US will play the key role in how the global trade will rebound. And hopefully it'll be in a positive, and let's hope it's going to be a lot quicker. And it's going to be in 2021, which I think if we all sat here, we can probably think, you know what, we can live with this. And again, for you, it's about planning. If you are dealing with places like the US and China, you must be checking to see. We're now starting to see US going through what we're going through. So we'll see some similar, sir, where there'll be stops of goods moving or companies maybe closing. So again, you know, this is all about planning. It's about planning your goods. Is China, can I still buy from China? Can I still buy from Europe? Can I still export? These are the things as a business now you need to really be thinking about. And to really kickstart when you go back on a full, hopefully fully, everything will kickstart and you'll start to see progression and getting back to the levels what we were before. Unfortunately, we had to close. I'm open to questions. David, if you want to just go on the next slide, and then I'll just. This is just to let you know that this is me. I do lots of different courses. I hope David don't mind me just saying this, but I do different courses on understanding exports, understanding imports, Brexit planning. I've been doing these courses for a long, long time, and they are very enjoyable. If you are interested in doing, I'm going to be putting some on in April. I would normally do these with the institute, but obviously I'm freelance, so I'll be doing some nice courses at very reasonable price. And I just want to get people interested in exporting, importing, any Brexit planning. I'm a Brexit specialist, and all my courses are accredited. So again, we can have a look at that. But if anybody's got any questions, I'm here for as many questions as you want. And thank you very much for listening. Excellent. Well, Richard, thank you very much for the presentation. I think yes, that was very informative. Clearly, we are uncharted territory to an extent. I think that when you have an event-driven crisis like this, typically the recovery period is more shallow or shorter rather, yes, than it is when you have a financial crisis or yes, and that's what I wanted to highlight, David. When you're hearing a lot of talk, this is different, and this hopefully the rebound will be a lot quicker than it would on a financial crisis. Yeah, I think that's important for people to kind of understand. Yes, historically, I mean, the rebound from event crisis tends to be around the 18-month mark, whereas for a financial crisis, it can be around the 60-month mark. Corporate balance sheet crisis, sort of 40, 50-month mark. So yeah, I think that obviously it's tricky now. We're only at the sort of end of the second week of lockdown here in the UK. I think everyone's probably feeling a little bit of cabin fever. I know I am. Yeah, I am. And unfortunately, I don't want to go. No, exactly. We don't have on when this ends. So, but it will end, everyone. And being well prepared for that is obviously important, and making sure that you manage your risk in the interim, and your stock levels and delivery, obviously very important to to maintain functionality in your business. So we have a few questions starting to come in. We have a question from Faye, but it didn't really get completed. Maybe, Faye, you can just give us that one again. We have another question here from a gentleman asking whether you envisage the Brexit EU trade line being extended. I've been thinking about this because obviously as a Brexit advisor working here and in Europe, I'm in two minds. The government has a bit of a, for me, if I'm being honest, is in a bit of a kind of an unusual situation. They know that the EU is going to be hit very hard with this global meltdown. Do they want to prolong something and then be drawn into something for another year? I think a transition, we've always said, would have been better to do the transition till the end of 2021 and then start in 2020 to get people prepared. It'll be interesting. At the moment, Gove is certainly sticking to his guns and saying we will be leaving at the end of the year. I think that's more because of the planning financially, that they know they can kickstart the economy if they're outside the EU. But I think the actual resources and the pressure it's going to put on businesses who are just going through this turbulent time, I think will be too great. So I think that we're going to have a look at this. So again, I'm quite happy to update people if they want to email me. It's something I'm looking at. It's something I've been dealing with for a long time, 3 years doing Brexit. Again, it'll be very interesting in the next month how the UK copes with COVID-19 and how quick we come out of this. I think that'll be the key. If we come out in the next month, we might see them not extending. If it prolongs, we might see an extension. And they have in July to do that.
Yes, obviously there are exceptional circumstances here, so that remains a fluid situation. We have another question here from Rufus. Nice to see you again, Rufus. Thanks for joining us again. What do you think the impact will be if we end up with further lockdowns after the initial lockdown on the recovery prognosis or estimates for recovery? I mean, obviously I think that question is, what happens if we go into lockdown again in September, if this sort of reappears in the fall?
Yeah, I mean, thanks, Rufus. It's a difficult one. It really is. I mean, I've been looking at all impacts, going through all, studying a lot of areas and different people talking, and you tend to find that some people talk sense and some people talk as if we're going into Acropolis. What you will find is that, yes, I mean, if there is another lockdown, which hopefully we won't see, if there is, I would think that we have learnt lessons from the first original lockdown and how that's had the effects on the economy. It'd be interesting to see how much lockdown they will put if there is a second one on the recovery. If there is a recovery, there is talk that it will go into 2022, about the second or third quarter, if this lockdown lasts till after September. That's the talk, that 2022 third quarter will start to see recovery, not 2021. So again, it's kind of a similar situation.
Yes, I mean, hopefully, I think, Rufus, there is hope that maybe an antibody passport is developed, or tested, so you can see whether you've had it, and
yes, I think
so. Get a semblance of normalcy returning. But as it stands currently, it's very unclear. Clearly, that is potential issue that we face. Uncertainty around when the lockdown will be lifted, or whether it will be reinstated at some point in the future, and that makes planning difficult, obviously. So it's a very good question. Unfortunately, we don't have a huge amount of color on that, but I think hope that generally people are able to return with some form of more complete testing, and whether there is immunity to this if you have had it, which isn't clear. It looks like you can get it multiple times. So unfortunately, can't really give you a clear answer on that one, but likely, if it wasn't reinstated, the lockdown, it would probably push that recovery window out to an extent.
I think so. Thanks, David.
Faye is asking us, she is in the startup phase of her business and was starting to set RRPs before this hit.
Mm-hmm.
How cautious do I need to be about advertising these prices? I was going to hold off fixing a price until after this is over. Is this necessary?
This is, again, depends. I mean, fantastic you're starting up, and unfortunately crises do come and go. And this is obviously a major crisis, but a great time to probably, if you can get through this fair, which I'm sure you will, I don't think you'll have any problems. It's a good way to start out. Just give you an idea, I've been dealing with a new company based down in London who have just started up doing it's more in the cosmetics side, and she's already seen 4 or 5 orders coming through from the startup, where she thought with COVID-19 would have a huge effect. It doesn't stop people buying. What I would say about fixing your price, just have a look. The key for you is where you're buying your goods from. Are you buying from China? You must realize that when you're buying goods from, the prices do differ when you're buying from China, and they could change with the container price, so the price of your product will change. We know that the prices at the moment from China are quite high, and that will again settle down. But again, do you mean average to work out? But it's entirely up to you, but you don't have to hold off. If you're confident that you're buying well, you're producing, you're doing everything, you know what your fixed price is, there's no reason why you can't change that. But again, make sure global trade is changing, and certainly the price fluctuations will change on that. And also, if you're buying in dollars and in different currencies, again, you can imagine the currencies have been hit hard. So again, I would have that in your price index to say it works on a certain percentage of the price. When you originally did it, was dollar was around 130. Again, if it's dropping, you need to have that into your pricing.
Yes, clearly managing FX risk effectively is going to be important. I would have thought the end consumer price obviously is a function of the general health of the economy to an extent, but I assume that if your product is, the price to the end consumer would remain relatively fixed. I don't see huge fluctuations there yet.
No, I don't.
So we have another question here from David. Given that the recovery timelines you're describing stretch into next year, how long can the UK government afford to extend the UK job retention scheme? I know that they've only set out an initial 3 months before there is an economic
I can see that,
into 2008, i.e. restricted debt.
Yeah, I mean, we're all hoping, David, we're all in the same here, and I'm sure the government's the same as us. We're hoping this is very much a 3 month. It's going to last for 3 months, and then hopefully after 3 months, we'll start to get back to normal. We're on our second week of lockdown, and I'm sure we're all feeling it. I'm certainly feeling it, especially when you've got kids driving you nuts in the other rooms, playing the Xbox and talking to a screen that doesn't know it can't answer you back, but my kids don't seem to understand that. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure the government will look at this. I think the government have actually set out to really support businesses and try and keep businesses that they can keep on. But I know, there's no wonder I'm talking to people. I know a lot of businesses are not sure how quick the recovery is going to be. So all we can do is hope that the recovery will be quicker. We hope that this will be for the end of June or end of May, and we'll start to see the snippets where we start to come out, and then we can start the drive ready for next year. So hopefully we'll only see a year, and we don't see the 2008 of the restricted debt. Is certainly not what the government wants, and certainly not what we want to see.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Richard. Now we have another question here from Bob. What will happen to freight forwarders that have been impacted twice? Firstly, in lockdown in China, which reduced output exports by 80%, and now in EU in lockdown. I fear that due to FF being a low margin business model, capacity may become a problem.
Yeah, I mean, talking firsthand as a logistics operator for 20 years, I know that our margins are very low. We know lots of businesses who are big importers from China, relying heavily, have had a real, forget obviously the COVID-19 now, they've actually had the impact for when China originally went into the, unfortunately, the virus. So they had a huge impact for them months coming up. We know we had the new year. But they're waiting for containers to come in. So we know the forwarders have already been hit very hard. Going into Europe, there are forwarders still shipping into Europe. I'm doing goods into Europe with my forwarder at the moment. But we know, I've been reading stories that people, I'm working with a company in Lancaster who do a lot of domestic work for the supermarkets. And because the market is now very subdued, everybody's fighting with each other. So they've lost a £2 million contract that they've been doing for the last 4 years. They've suddenly had that taken up, and because of the prices reduced, and the supermarkets are taking advantage, which unfortunately supermarkets take advantage of forwarders. It's just a known fact. So we're certainly seeing now, and I would envisage a lot of forwarders at the moment are going through some sleepless nights, and I really hope the market picks up again so they can get back on the feet and start working. But when you're working on 2-3% margins, I know it's difficult. I've been there, and it is difficult. I actually thought about this the other day and thought, when I had 22 staff 4 years ago, I'm so glad I'm not in that situation now. And it must be very difficult for people. And all I said, so stick in there, it will get better.
So it sounds like capacity may be a problem potentially, and fees may go up in that market.
Well, the fees we're certainly seeing the fees going up in China. We're not seeing fees going up too much into Europe. What we'll see, David, is it will keep at the price it is, because people are still shipping there. So the market, Europe dictates itself. It always has done with Europe. And now China is slightly different, because China is dictated on the volume what we're sending out. So We're certainly seeing prices in China on air freight and sea freight at the moment. We're certainly seeing sea freight coming back down to the levels they were before the lockdown. We're certainly seeing air freight high at the moment, because obviously there's less planes, etc. So if you are very much reliant on air freight, on a quick turnaround, you're going to be paying a lot more. What I would say though is plan your 30 days, 32 days, or even there's a new train system leaving China that comes via Germany. It takes 16 days. They're running at full capacity at the moment. So again, there's options there. It's a bit cheaper than air freighting. So again, if anybody wants to know about that, I can certainly give them some details to get some prices. So again, if you're at that high level of paying over $4 per kilo more than you was before the lockdown, we know that there is options out there. So again, if anybody needs anything, you've got my email, give me a shout, and I can put you in the right direction to speak to people.
Thank you, Richard. That's interesting. I didn't know that was operational yet. We have a message from Sophia. Sophia, nice to see you again. Thanks for joining us again this morning. Great to hear businesses are still launching. Just a great time to revisit existing business models. And I think we need to remember we will see the other side of this. And I think that's a good point. We definitely will see the other side of this. Out of crisis comes opportunity. Obviously, we're at the most difficult phase now. At the very beginning, it's very confusing. There's no clarity, but eventually that will come. And the economy will recover, and we will get back to normal.
Yeah,
this will pass.
Yeah, and I think hopefully the recovery, like Dave said, will be quicker than the financial crash because it's affecting everybody. So we'd like to hope that there'll be a stimulus that what we might see going forward, which is the thing to look at, if you are importing goods from around the world and paying relatively between 2 and 10% duties on coming in, we might see the government reducing this. So again, it kickstarts the economy by you not paying too much duty. So again, it refrains you having to pay out lots of money. So I think there'll be lots of ideas. I'm hoping the government will be thinking of these, of how, and we certainly know the WTO at this moment. Next week, they're having a meeting to look at how they can reduce duties around the world to make the market kickstart again. So again, keep an eye on that.
Great, Richard, that's very helpful. So let's just wait a second, see if we have any more questions here. But I think we're maybe coming close to the end of our session. So, Richard, thank you very much for taking the time to join us this morning, and very helpful and informative, and some great questions, everyone. So thank you. Yes, I think if you want to get in touch with Richard, his details are richard@exportunlocked.com or via the website www.exportunlocked.com. And he can give you advice on all your questions about issues surrounding these topics. So, Richard, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
No, you're welcome. Absolutely welcome.
And thank you everyone for taking the time to join us this morning. I hope you found it useful, and there'll be a replay available immediately after this broadcast is over. So have a great day, everyone, and a great weekend.
Yeah, thank you. Good luck, everybody. Stay safe.
Bye now.
Thanks, David.